Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Z's and Zers,
Okay, we're just gonna go there.
humans of Earth,
All right.
welcome to episode 1 of hashtag Stay Toxic, the podcast for everyone.
I'm your host, Luis.
And I'm Kodak Vibes.
We're gonna be toxic today. It's gonna be amazing. Do you just jump right into this real quick?
Yeah, why don't we just get started? This is our first episode, and we have no idea what the fuck we're doing,
Don't we all though?
but we're gonna persevere,
Yeah.
Power through.
Something like that.
be iconic.
Let's just kind of start off with like our biggest pet peeves in this shit. Things that we see that kind of just take us out of the whole Instagram experience, I guess. Like as a photographer, what's the first thing you see that just like ruins an image for you?
I'll tell you my biggest one is backdrop lighting.
How so?
When I see a poorly lit backdrop or a backdrop where you can clearly see all the imperfections and it's not intentional and it's not part of the story, it's because your setup sucks.
And by imperfections, you mean like wrinkles and shadows that don't need to be there?
Highlights, lowlights, rippling,
Yeah.
as we all get
Things
with our
that take
cheap
2
backgrounds.
seconds to fucking fix.
Anyone
before
who's
you
shot
start
with me
shooting.
knows my backgrounds suck.
Yeah, they really do.
But I make sure that in post you can't see that shit.
I make sure in while we're shooting that we can't see that shit. So that's 2 different ways that you
Two
can
different
do
ways.
to fix it. So how do you go about it? Like, what would be your first like step to fix that?
Well, let's say our first line of defense is always proper lighting.
Yeah.
We always want to do as much as we can in camera. And I think that's an area where a lot of people overlook the background of a photo. You get so stuck on the subject matter that it almost becomes like a blindness.
So my first step before I even get the model out there is I will shoot the backdrop and see how it looks like at my current settings. Because I've done it for a while that I know I'm always going to be shooting at f8, 200
The
on my
classic.
shutter, and then 100 ISO. So if I take a photo of the backdrop and it looks clean, then I know I'm good to go. It's going to be a great shoot. If not, I'll see some imperfections and I'll start tweaking the lights to kind of get rid of those, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to like a general lack of knowledge of the importance of lighting, especially when it comes to amateur photographers, Instagram photographers. People will do the bare minimum
Oh, 100%.
all the time, as much as
100%.
fucking possible.
People just think you can go out there and throw a light and you're good to go. When
Yeah.
in reality, there's so much that goes into it. Placement is huge in this,
It's massive.
and that's where we get into like intent behind our lighting. You know,
Right.
Like you have to plan this shit out. You can't just wing it. Man, that goes back to like what I was saying earlier, like going out there and shooting your backdrop before you even get the model out there and making sure everything's good to go. You see shadows that aren't supposed to be there, adjust it, move it back, move it forward, find it out for yourself because it's not always going to be the same.
Right. And some shadows on your backdrop are creative, right? If you have
I don't know about that.
your shadows in the right spot.
If you want a bad photo, yeah. No, he's right. He's 100% right. Some people like shadows. I don't, but to each their own.
I do. I generally like to keep a lot of shadows, but I also shoot a lot darker than you do.
You do.
We
you do a
come
lot
from
more
opposite
continuous.
ends of the spectrum on that.
Hey, I used to shoot Sony. It's okay. I understand. I understand the want for a moody photo.
Yeah, well, you know, I like to stand out. I have to work through my gear's limitations. You know?
Spoken like a true Sony shooter. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. What's another thing? Once you get that and say you just can't nail it, what would you do?
I think you need to. My personal philosophy is always to shoot. Prioritize the lighting that you have. Prioritize what you have available to you, and then adjust your shot to that, instead of trying to force your shot to look a certain way.
So I feel like that's a lot more to do with like natural light and stuff like that, where
I
you
think
don't have like
it's
a
for
set.
flash too, though. You know, if you think about like what you said before, a lot of people will just point a light at something, because in the photography and videography world, brightness is next to godliness, as far as quality
people
and
fuck up.
cleanliness goes. Like,
Yeah.
and I think people get too tunnel visioned
Yeah.
with just putting more light on a subject and creating that bright, quote unquote, professional photographer environment of lighting of just something bright.
Yeah.
And they forget that there's still an importance to how you shape your light,
100%.
regardless of whether you're using continuous or flash.
Yeah.
Like when you set your lighting up, you always start with your flashes on.
Yeah.
right?
100%. I add each flash individually.
Right.
So I'll start with my my hair light, my backdrop light, and then I'll go to my key light. And it's each individually set, and then I bring them all together to see how it looks as a whole.
Yeah, and I think that's the process that most people should use, but let's be honest, most people don't know anything about lighting
Yeah.
beyond roughly where to put their main light, maybe a hair light. But like the real nuances of lighting comes down to those small adjustments.
100%.
Like the more time you spend on those small adjustments, the better your image is going to look.
What would be your
in the
biggest
end.
like tip for that?
My biggest tip, and the way that I always work, which is going to be different from yours,
Yeah.
I always start from the bottom up. All lights off.
Yeah.
Environmental lights off, even if we're shooting flash. Everything starts in the dark.
I can see that, but no, sorry, I'll let you go. I'll let you go. This isn't my
Add your
time.
opinion after this.
This isn't my
goddammit.
time.
I always start darker and then I work my way lighter because number one, I prefer to shoot dark and moody if I have
Yeah.
a choice. That's just my style. So if it's creative photography and I have a choice, I'll always start dark and then bring up to the point where I start to get that atmospheric look, that emotion. And then I'll tweak from there as far as like lighting position.
I think we're a lot more similar than you think.
We just come from different worlds.
Because I'm at f8, so everything I do without light is going to be dark. And that goes back to me adding each individual light in
Right.
at a time.
And I shoot from the opposite with
Yeah.
no lights starting at f4 or f2,
You're at
f1.2,
f1.4.
f1.4.
Yeah.
And then I work my way up. But I think it's just because we have different styles.
Yeah, 100%.
You know? But
and there's no wrong way to
we
do
both
it.
know what we're looking for
Yeah.
in the shot. And that's the important thing, boys and girls.
Having intent behind
Know
your
what
lighting,
the
intent
fuck you're
behind your
doing.
shot. Yeah.
And your lighting will always supersede any other equipment that you have. It doesn't matter how good your camera is, if your lighting sucks,
The
your
shot's
photo's gonna suck.
Yeah.
Like how many people do we know with cameras that we would
Do we want to name
sell a
him?
nut to have?
Yeah.
Hi, Alex Todd.
Hey, he's not bad, okay? Leave him alone. We love Alex.
He's not
here.
bad. We just want his gear.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I mean,
there are
speak for
plenty of
yourself.
people who will try to buy their way to a good photo.
You trying to call me out?
I mean,
Fair. I just add, I'm the stereotypical add more light to make it better guy, I guess.
but at least it's
No, but I know-
intentional light.
Yeah,
but
yeah, for sure.
yeah, we've seen plenty of people with better gear than we have fail to execute on a photo. It happens all the time.
100%. It comes down to planning at the end of the day, and making your vision a reality, no matter what. Give me one
Yeah,
more
I would
thing.
sort of agree with that. I think knowing your gear and knowing how to sculpt your light is the most important. If you have the time to plan, that's awesome, but at least know how to adapt to a situation.
Yeah.
You know, like if you don't have the light to get the specific look that you're working on, maybe look at it from a different perspective. Maybe try and do something dark and moody.
Yeah.
Maybe do the opposite. You know, it's just kind of like pay
That
attention
terrifies
to like it's like if you're trying to bake a cake or make something to eat for dinner and you don't know what ingredients you have, you can't plan out how you're going to cook until you see what you have, you know?
Yeah.
As we cook this great, beautiful dessert that is our photos. Delicious.
All right, we're gonna cut there. How do we transition out of this now?
We're going to take a moment to thank our sponsors.
Oh, fucking Kirkland brand vodka.
Kirkland, if you are looking to sponsor a podcast and I've never heard your
Please
name
don't.
on
I
a
need a
podcast
break.
sponsor, we want the Costco money. We'll take it.
We kind of want Daddy Bezos money. Let's be real, but we'll get
Amazon
there.
doesn't sell liquor.
I mean, we'll get there. Get everything else.
Spoken
we
like a
need.
true alcoholic, our first sponsor needs to be liquor.
Yeah, for real. Speaking like a true photographer, let's be real. Have you met a sober photographer yet?
Not a good one.
Sorry,
I met a lot of sober
Alex.
wedding and baby photographers
Yeah.
and senior portrait photographers. Shout out, you guys don't get any love because you suck.
I mean, they do.
But you know,
Dude,
people
okay.
gotta eat.
Do they though? Do they? Let's go into another thing that really bothers me when we're shooting. I had
Yeah.
a shoot recently, and I won't name names, but I called this model up, and she came, and like last minute, she's like, "Hey, can I bring a friend?" And like, of course, you can bring a friend. Like, we'll let you bring a friend. It's whatever makes you feel comfortable in the moment. but don't bring a friend that's gonna be like a second or third shooter, you know?
Right.
Like trying to pose you while you're shooting with me, that's my biggest pet peeve. Like just like let me do my work. Obviously you're there to make them feel comfortable, but don't try to like change the model out of my poses or tell her to do something when we're trying to do something else.
100%. That annoys me to no end. And obviously, model safety is number one.
Oh, without
And
a doubt.
you, if you're uncomfortable, if you're working with someone for the first time, always bring a friend.
Yeah.
But make sure your friend knows why the fuck they're there.
Exactly.
They're not there to talk. They're not there
They're not
to
the
give
photographer.
suggestions.
If they were the photographer, you'd be shooting
Exactly.
with them.
And most of them don't know what they're talking about anyway. But how many
Have you ever
times
been
have
on
we
a
shot?
shoot when they're like,
so many
reach
times.
towards the camera?
Or just, yeah, if you're not the photographer and it's not your shoot and you don't know what you're talking about, you're just a distraction.
100%.
And it takes away from our ability to get the shots that we want.
But in that same like reference, I guess, I've had people be on shoots where they can make the client like more comfortable and get them to laugh or get them to show certain emotion. So
True.
it's like a
Yeah,
fine
yeah,
line.
I
Like
think
if we're trying to get that,
someone's
then
there
yes, by
for
all means,
comfort.
step in, please. But don't try to change the shot, if that makes
Right.
sense.
And that, I think it comes back to like, be responsible for who you bring, right?
Yeah.
Like, make sure that they know how to behave on a photography
It's
set.
such a weird subject to talk about because
It's
obviously
good.
we want safety and we want the model to be
Yeah.
comfortable, but at the same time we want to create something and we don't want something to like encroach on our vision for that
Yeah.
same shot.
Maybe bring attention to the fact that it's important how the person you bring behaves.
Yeah.
And it can have a big impact on the shoot. Like,
Oh, 100%.
I've definitely had people show up with friends, either one person or multiple people, and they were so distracting that it takes the fun of the shoot away. And it just
Oh.
becomes like a job just to get enough shots that you're satisfied or
Yeah.
they're going to be happy enough.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to like power through this miserable experience. You're not inspired. You're not having a good time.
Yeah.
And what pisses me off just as much is when you bring someone without telling me that you're bringing someone. And I've had that happen before. Where
Or
like,
when they bring like a second model to shoot, like, hey, my
Yeah,
friend's a
that's
model too, and
just
they're
as
starting
bad.
out.
And it's
Do you
like-
mind getting some photos of them? Like, no. That's really messed up thing to do. Like, I'm playing the shoot around you. I'm
Right.
setting a set amount of time to edit your photos and do your photos, and I have other things I want to do today. And if you bring someone else who's going to double our workload and not tell me about it, let alone ask me if it's okay, like, come on.
Yeah, no, it's very frustrating. And then, like you said, the amount of time it takes to pose and do something unique with two different people and all the extra post work is a pain in the ass.
I mean, that's how we get into burnout.
It is how we
Honestly.
get into
It's
burnout.
one of the big things that contribute to it. Like, I'm in a really bad place. I'm not gonna lie. I'm about 4 or 5 months behind
Guys,
right now.
we're in a really bad spot, both of us.
Yeah, it's not good, guys.
I'm sure people watching this are like, why are they not editing my photos right now?
I'm sorry we had to do this. We had to get it off our chest.
Yeah.
But it's not that we don't want to do it, but it's just like we're constantly doing something. We're constantly shooting. We're constantly out, and it just stacks up.
Well, okay, let's.
And we gotta like realize like this is mostly TFP for me. I have
This
some
is
paid
mostly
gigs here and there,
TFP.
but like I'm not gonna prioritize this TFP shoot for something that's gonna pay me.
Well, okay, before we get too far into burnout, let's talk about TFP
Yeah.
and TFP situations and what we expect from people when they come to us.
My biggest
for
pet
TFP.
peeve with that
It's
is
your biggest pet peeve.
okay, they will hit me up. Hey, I love your work. I'd love to shoot sometime. Are you open to collab? I'm like, yeah, I'm down. Let's do it. I'll look at your page. If it's something I want to do, then yeah, let's do it. But then it was like, do you have any concepts you want to do? I was like, well, maybe here or there, but is there something you'd like to do? And then a TFP turns into more work for me because they don't have an idea of what they want to do. They don't have location. They don't have outfit. And now I have to be a stylist. Now I have to be a creative director instead of focusing on what I want to do, which is take the photo.
Right. No, 100%. I agree with that. That's always frustrating. I think there's two sides to the coin, obviously. Whether you have the idea and then you reach out to the model is one situation, but if someone's reaching out to shoot with you, it's definitely helpful for them to either A, have a concrete idea of what the fuck they want to shoot,
Yeah.
or B, be receptive to your ideas and be understanding if you don't have any.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, something that we
And that's not
suck
a
at
bad
as
thing.
photographers, or at least I suck at, is being like, listen, I don't have anything for you right now.
Yeah.
I always say yes if it's someone
That you
that
wanna
I
work
want to
with.
shoot with. If I don't have an idea, I'll still say yes, when in reality, I should probably say, you know what, I don't have a great concept for you right now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a meet in the middle sort of situation. But
That's another thing that contributes to your burnout. But
It
we'll
does.
we'll get to that here in a little bit. Like I said earlier, like my biggest thing is if you're reaching out to me and you want to do something like trade for print, come with an idea. And I don't know you. Like I don't know what
Right.
you like to do. I don't know what your boundaries are. I don't know what your style is. Like give me something to work off. And if you give me that little bit, then I can get a better idea of who you are and build something around that. But if you just come to me telling me to like come up with an idea, come up with styling, location, lighting, like what are you contributing besides yourself?
right,
And it's free. Like
and
come
it's
on.
free.
We have to work together on this.
This is why we need sponsors. Shout out Kirkland.
Shout out Kirkland. I need more right now. I'm about done. That's right.
Well, anyway, okay, that takes us nicely into talking a little bit about burnout and overshooting. So I know that when I am in those situations where I'm shooting with someone who doesn't have a concrete idea, or maybe we had initially talked about an idea and then some situational issue arose where we couldn't execute, which happens all the time with TFP. Like someone will say, oh, I have a great idea for this shoot and this is the outfit I'm gonna wear, blah, 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 blah. And they show up and they're like, oh, I forgot my clothes.
Yeah.
Or like, I forgot my shoes, or like, I couldn't find this, so I brought a completely different color. And like, as
Well,
a
that just threw
photographer,
everything out the window.
it completely messes up your flow for the shoot. It puts you in a position where you're on the back foot and you're just trying to
Yeah.
compensate the whole
100%.
time. And like dovetailing into that, like people showing up and not having any idea of what they want to shoot, it puts us in a position to have to deliver. And a lot of times when you don't have a solid idea of what you're doing, you have to compensate by overshooting.
Well, I mean, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with our backdrops and lighting and our importance in that.
Right.
Like, if I have to worry about not only coming up with a new idea on the spot, that takes away from me setting up our lights, setting up basically every other aspect of the shoot. And it drains you on shoot. And
It does.
if we have a concept, that's awesome. We planned that out. We worked it through. And if it falls through last minute, I'm fucked because I can't think of anything. I don't know. It's just a weird place to be
Yeah,
in.
I mean, it's like when you're trying to be creative, you can't always just force it. And I think people have a hard time understanding that are not naturally creative.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't just happen. Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can roll up to a shoot and just wing it. But
Which we've all been there.
that's based off of like your own creative style and how you operate.
Yeah.
So when you aren't feeling creative and you're in that pressure environment of like, it's time to deliver, you're on location, it's time to get the shots, at least for me, that usually leads to severe overshooting.
Oh, 100%.
When I'm trying to like throw the kitchen sink at this shoot to make something really unique because my reputation's on the line because,
And that's what people don't understand.
Right.
Is that they just want you to take a photo. It's like, I don't want to do that. Like, I have a brand, I have an image that I want to, like, sustain, and doing something that I'm not into is going to, like, ruin that.
I think a big part of that comes down to like our own egos and like insecurities.
100%.
As photographers,
Which
we
we
set
are-
the bar so high
Yeah.
with everything. Like it's
Oh,
life or
dude.
death with every shoot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not a good place to be.
It's really not. And it's like the littlest things, too, that get us.
It really is.
It
Like
really-
just a piece of hair in the wrong place.
The Instagram's going to, like, compress it. You won't even see
You won't
the
even
fucking
see
thing.
it. But still, it's just like
It's there.
It's there. And like when we're in those situations, like I said, we tend to overshoot. And then you get in this situation where you get home after the shoot and you've got 600 to 800 photos,
Oh,
900
dude.
photos. Especially, I think the more you shoot, the better you get. But especially when I was first starting out,
There comes a point
it
where...
was 900 photos a shoot.
Oh, yeah.
And that takes a ridiculous amount of time to go through.
Yeah.
And
I
it's,
can't even imagine taking that many photos now.
No.
I would literally die.
But even now, 200 photos is too many. 100
Oh,
photos is
100%.
too
If
many.
I take 150 photos, I'm stressing. Because I have to go through and look at every little detail to see what I'm going to like.
Right.
And that's just tiring. And
It's exhausting.
I don't want to do that.
And you
I don't
can
know.
only look at like the same set of photos so long before you start to get burnt out on it.
Yeah.
At least for me, like once you try to spend 2 or 3 hours culling down your photos, you're already over it. You're over the whole fucking shoot.
And then, not to mention, you're still in the culling process, and they're like, "Where are my photos?"
Yeah, and then everyone wants their free fucking photos back.
Yeah, and it's just like a constant fucking thing. Like, I get it. We shot a week ago. Leave me the fuck alone and let me do this.
Yeah, well, or even in some cases, a month or 2 months or 3 months, the perceptions of how long it takes to do all that stuff are skewed.
Oh, dude,
If you aren't a photographer and editor yourself, and we can talk about editing later, but just the amount of time just to compile your photos, do your grades, do your touch-ups for free, it's really burdensome.
just because the process ends the day of the shoot for you doesn't mean it ends for me.
No, that's when the work
There's
actually
so
starts.
much that keeps going after that.
Just
I was
hours
on a
and
shoot the
hours.
other day, and it was one of those situations where the model brought another model that we didn't talk about. And towards the end of the shoot, the other model's like, "Hey, so when do we get photos?" I'm like, "About 2 or 3 months." And she just looked at me like I was crazy. It's like, in reality, you're like 15 shoots behind right now.
Right.
Before I even start culling your shit right. Like, you weren't even supposed to be here.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's frustrating. And
I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it, but like, you took a huge break. So did I. Like,
yeah,
we had to.
absolutely. And sometimes it's not like a linear return. Like, real life is a thing.
Yeah.
Like, real jobs are a thing. There
And
are a
that's
few
another
people
thing
that
I don't see.
are privileged enough to do this full time, but a lot of us have to subsidize with other work, especially when you do so much TFP.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's hard to balance that. It's hard to balance, working 60-hour work weeks and then trying to be creative
Yeah.
at the same time. Sometimes it just doesn't work.
Dude, I'll work 12 hours, and I work construction, so I'll go out, work 12 hours, and then get home, and the last thing on my mind is to go through your fucking photos.
Right.
Like, I'm exhausted, and then I get a message like, "Hey, how are they coming?" I just feel horrible at that point. And I hate saying it, but I'll just kind of ghost and just kind of like get to it another day.
Yeah. I think it's something we should all work on, is being more open and honest about.
Well, that's one thing that I've been working on as of late, is like being honest with the models while we're shooting and be like, "Hey, I love these photos, but it's going to be a month or two.
Right.
And if I can get done earlier, great. If not, I'm sorry." But letting them know from the beginning, and that's something we could work on too, because I know I was guilty of it in the past. I wouldn't tell them anything.
Yeah. Well, in the moment, you always,
Well,
or
you're so
most of the time,
excited.
you're excited and you're ready to get to work on them and you want to get to work on them, but sometimes, and also you can have different bursts of inspiration for different shoots,
Yeah.
not necessarily in chronological order, right? Like sometimes you'll be in a shoot where everything's prepared or the model's really good and the lighting's perfect and you just get the shots and you're excited to get those shots out, more so than maybe another shoot.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's not because of the model. And I think that's where they're confused on the other side of the table, is they think maybe they didn't do a good enough job as a model.
I'm not gonna like say anything, but like there's a model that posted a story the other day that just like really got to me, and really made me see that you need to communicate more on both ends and
Yeah.
like, setting those expectations.
Yeah, it definitely goes
correctly.
both ways. Like when you don't return a photo set or you leave them, unedited for quite a while, they can start to have their own anxieties about, well, maybe they didn't enjoy shooting with me or they didn't enjoy
Yeah.
working with me. And generally that's not the case. Sometimes that's the case.
I mean, yeah.
Some of you guys are fucking terrible.
They're fucking. I shot with the girl that just gave me the same fucking expression for fucking 50 photos.
Yeah, it's
straight.
great. And then you have to try and diversify it and make it unique.
Like, how do I make this different from that? Sorry. It is what it is.
Shoot your same facial expression from 10 different angles. Look at how unique this is.
Do this, but that way. Cool. We're done.
Yeah, that's complicated. There's a lot going on. So I get frustrated when I see people making those like Facebook or Instagram posts about like, oh, I didn't get my photos back yet. It's like, well, you know what?
They're free fucking photos.
They're
Chill.
free photos. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, literally. I mean, this
DMs
all-
are open for pay at any time.
exactly. If you want your photos like back fast, like my Venmo's like in the link. I'll let you know.
And that's another thing as well. Like, we severely undervalue our skills and time sometimes.
Oh, dude, I
And
know.
like, I know for me personally, there are people who I will shoot TFP with that are friends or that I like to work with and that will sometimes offer
we're
to pay.
friends?
But like, if I were to charge you what I really needed to charge you to do this
Would
in
you
a
be
really
shooting with
fat,
me?
you probably wouldn't be.
Yeah.
You probably couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And if you're skilled and you have, you know, the value, sometimes you don't charge for it, even if you are worth a certain amount, because you'll price people out.
I'm gonna be real with you. That photo I took of Angela that kind of blew up. It took me about an hour and a half just to do the background. That's not even any retouching.
Right. That doesn't
And-
include all your.
And that doesn't include any of the color grading. That's just literally background work on the paper itself to get it the way I want it and the color that I wanted it. So there's times where a photo will take me, and I know it sounds absurd and ridiculous. Like, why does it take that long? But it's because of what I want it to be. But 3 or 4 hours. And
Oh, at least.
people just think you push buttons and it's done. But no, there's so much work that goes on the back end.
Yeah, when I do like a composite works and I add environmental effects like lighting or light rays or things like that, it takes hours and hours and hours because you need to make sure that what you're adding to the photo isn't necessarily distracting and that it complements the original photo. And I can sit there and edit sometimes on a single photo and then 6 hours later, I
Hate
look
it.
at the clock and number one, I hate it.
Yeah.
And number two, it took me 6 fucking hours to do one photo.
And that's another thing, is I will spend all that time on this photo and I'll get done and I'm like, what the fuck? Why? I forgot something and I have to restart that entire process and
Oh, yeah.
do it all over again.
It's the worst.
It is.
Or like you said, you get in these little tunnels where you're editing a photo, and if you don't take the time to step away and come back, you realize that at the end of it, it looks like shit.
Yeah.
Because you got so tunnel visioned in this photo, you didn't take a step back, take a breath,
Yeah.
and then come back to it.
100%.
And so that's hours of your life wasted.
Just
And
gone.
you start over.
Just fucking gone.
All over. I do that all the time.
And then you got the model hitting you up. Hey, where are the photos?
And you're like, and then you have this massive anxiety.
Yeah, I just don't want to let them down at that point. I don't know. It's such a weird space to be in, what we're
It
doing.
is a weird space to be in. What a time to be alive.
We can't all be Strawberry Hive.
Shout out Willem.
Shout out, Willem. I love you, man.
Someday he'll be on the podcast, don't worry.
Right? Oh, which camera do I look at? This one, that one, you.
Look wherever you want.
That's scary.
This is our podcast.
Can I do this real quick?
Emotional damage.
We have a soundboard, guys.
It's gonna come,
It's
don't
gonna.
worry.
It's gonna. That's what she said.
Why would you take it there? Wow.
That's what we're.
Bruh.
I'm so sorry ahead of time for the future episodes.
They love it.
It's gonna be bad.
That's what they're here for. This type of content. All right, guys. I think we're right around our 30-minute time limit for today.
Yeah, we're gonna call it.
Thank you for coming to the inaugural episode of the hashtag Stay Toxic podcast. More to come.
Always, don't forget.
Stay tuned and stay toxic.
Love you guys. Bye.